your lifestyle. All right, Natasha's given me the thumbs up, so I'll call this workshop to order. It's July 31st at 2 p.m., and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone. So first up is amendment and approval of the agenda.
No amendments from me. I'll
Jay?
move to approve the agenda. I'll second that.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Yes.
And yes, motion passes 3-0. That takes us to the discussion item, which is Sheriff Ward and funding solutions.
Afternoon. We have already spoken about this proposal for becoming a special district for law enforcement. I've been putting a lot of work in on it. I've made a lot of phone calls to other agencies, other clerks' offices, and things like that. First of all, I want to introduce some of my people that I've asked to be part of our Citizens Advisory Group. Chris Pash, Larry Preston Enzi, Georgia and Bruce Cockerham, Joe Wilson, and Dave Barnes. And I've also got here today with me is Jeremy Crone, my jail lieutenant. I've had him help working on some numbers. And I got a couple packets I can pass out. I only made 5 copies, but most of it's all from Josephine County. And I tried to pattern this after Josephine County because they went through the same thing, and they went and have a law enforcement district. Most of the stuff, like I say, is information provided, but one of the main things on this is a Josephine County service agreement is the timeline. And it's obvious that they put a lot of time in, and everybody's going to have to work on getting something passed. Because it's not something that can just be thrown on a ballot and here you go, because there's a lot of things that the BOC is going to have to initiate as far as the hearings, publishing publications, and putting a ballot measure on the ballot. So, like I say, I'll give 3 copies here, one for each commissioner. On the top page is just a sample ballot measure that I patterned based on information I got from Josephine County. Of course, all theirs are a lot different from us. They have a population base we don't. And this is something, it's just a draft, so these numbers can be changed. It's just something I threw in there. I figured if we wanted to get permanent funding and get us back to a place where we can be a little bit more sufficient, and would be, I would need 10 more positions in patrol, 2 more positions that were cut from us in corrections, and 1 position out of dispatch. Right now, everybody's working lots of overtime. It's killing us in overtime rates. A lot of people calling in sick, which causes the overtime rates. I myself got called out this last weekend 3 nights in a row to cover some major calls because we didn't have anybody on duty. In order to get us back to where we can work not 24/7, but 7 days a week and at least 15 to 18 hours a week, this is what it would take to get us to that point.
So, Sheriff, the numbers that are on here, are these Curry County numbers or Joe County numbers?
The front page is Curry County numbers that I put on there. Like I said, it's just a draft. They can be changed. They're just numbers that fill in a position.
This is what's done by the.
What I figure what would cost for what we're trying to find, trying to accomplish is those numbers, and it would take about $6,416,933,000 on a proposed district level.
So,
Right now, if we were to keep it the way it is and for funding, it'd be about $1.35 per thousand just to maintain what we have actually right now, which isn't not sufficient. And if you
Can I
have,
ask a, I'm sorry, this is Keena. I'm just voice in the ceiling. Can I ask a quick question in regards to that number, Sheriff?
yeah, go ahead.
Did that take into consideration overhead costs such as somebody to do your audit, your payroll, your finances, your HR, and all the indirect services, IT, phones, all that stuff that you wouldn't be supported with the county?
Yes,
I'm just trying to figure out the numbers.
yes, it does. I can have Jeremy come up and because I tasked him with putting these numbers together from the budget that he got from you. So,
well,
Okay, that would be great.
one thing that may assist, because there's two different types of things just that have been discussed. You initially said a special district, right? So a special district would be completely removed from the county. It would be its own entity, like the library, right? That would be a special district. A service district, which is essentially what Josephine County did, would be under the purview of the county. It would still be under the county commissioners. Only the difference is it would have its own tax, which is what Josephine County did. But that tax would essentially be outside of the county budget, assigned to a specific service, right? So there's two different routes or two different types of funding discussions occurring, I think, happening at the same time.
Yeah, two different districts.
Right, I think first we need to figure out, because if it was a special district, there would be zero general fund going to that special district, because it would be its own thing, which means, I did the math, and it's a lot, right? It's just under 3. When you have to have your own district with all the overhead covering dispatch, jail, patrol, some of the miscellaneous things that the general fund's covering, plus all of the overhead, IT, HR, all your contracts for everything for provided services, maintenance, et cetera, right? All of the things it would be to be a standalone district. Those numbers are large. A patrol service district, which Josephine did patrol and dispatch, right?
Right.
But if you did, if it was a patrol service district, just to cover patrol, then that's a whole different conversation, whole different animal, and then we would have to get into is it justifiable to charge the cities for the patrol district, or would we have to just go with rural? And if we just went with the rural areas that would be covered, what would that cost look like? Because now you're minimizing your tax availability, So, and I did the numbers for that as well, if we went that route. But I don't even know which discussion I tried to prepare as much as I could by kind of figuring out.
I thought that at the conversation, the last meeting, it was important that the that the law enforcement be taken out from the oversight of the county.
Well, that's what I gained. That's why I'm asking the question, because
That's my understanding.
I was under the understanding that it was a full commitment towards a special district out of the county purview, which is that's a different conversation than what Josephine did.
Well, what we're trying to do is just get back to a position where we can provide public safety, and I thought this was the best route to go.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Which route is it? Is it a service district or a special
What I
district?
said is, this is a special service district. The last time we talked, we're
So-
just throwing out things of what would work the best.
Right, so it would be a county service district. That's what we're discussing. Not a special district where it's outside the purview of the county. It's its own thing.
Well, we can discuss both, but like I said, the special district, I mean, the service district is not as expensive, I don't believe, as a.
Correct.
It's not even close to being, yeah, it's way more.
Correct.
If, just rough math, right, just rough math, if it was just county citizens paying for a patrol service district,
Right.
we would need to, last year's budget of 3.4, right, we would need to, it would be close to $2.10 to raise 3.4 with only half of our tax base. Does that make sense? So, I'm trying to, and now I think we're aligned. I think we understand what you're shooting for in terms of the idea of the taxing. That was the biggest confusion I had. I wasn't sure if we were looking at special or service districts.
And the estimated number I had on the special district was about 320.
That one's hard because we don't know all the indirect costs.
All the costs that we came up with is what we're charged right now, or what we're paying right now, plus the additions that we'd have to have in order to be sufficient.
And this example is countywide, not discounting the cities.
Right.
Okay. Which that number would be right in line with including everyone. So.
Well, that's why we're here today, to talk about a solution, a funding
Yeah.
solution. And
No, I agree.
that's why I presented this stuff, because it seems like it's not as expensive to do or timeline to do than a full district. It still takes a lot of time, and I don't think we have time to put it on this November's ballot, based on everything that I've learned from other agencies and clerks, and the timeline proposed for that. It just seems like it's too big of a lift, and I want to make sure that we do it right the first time and give it all we got, and not just try to shove something down somebody's throat.
I would agree with that.
When would be the next voting, May primary?
So just to be clear though, so essentially, this looks an awful lot like the levy.
But it's permanent.
Right.
Yeah, so, yeah, county service districts, there are a lot of them, and they provide a whole array of services that are kind of not funded in their certain places. And so this would essentially be, I would assume, somewhere linear to that, a patrol service district, something in along those lines. Am I,
Basically, yes.
okay,
So, and the numbers, Jeremy has the numbers, right? So are the numbers for the service district, are they designed to provide a level of service that is where we were before the cuts, or are they designed to provide a higher level of service than before the cuts?
Less than what we were before the cuts.
So it's not to get us back to where we were a year ago. It's to get us better than we are today.
Okay, so between today and where we were a year ago. Okay.
and I mean, this is all just a starting out, hypothetical starting out point, and I get that, because obviously with public input and everything else, you know, things have the ability to adapt and change and move. But this is just a starting out point. Is that what I'm getting?
Well, that's what this workshop is all about, what I was told. And then I put a lot of work into, you know, trying to provide something that we can live with. Not that we can live with, but it's better than what we got now.
Yeah, the only thing is, I mean, that's where the public input would probably become pretty vital, is because we would be choosing to live with it indefinitely.
I wouldn't want to do what we did last time and get the same outcome I want to put a lot of effort into it and get a better outcome.
So,
We don't want the same outcome.
so I guess my question, and maybe this can be answered by Ted or Keener, you might even know, Jay, but, so the service district, that goes into effect, can that be changed if the people say, okay, well, the level of service we're getting right now, we want more?
So,
And what does that look like?
so it's a permanent tax rate that would be approved by the voters, just like our 59 cents per thousand. So we would be going through the same type of process if we were trying to change our county permanent tax rate in the future. So, you know, everybody knows that it's really difficult. Once you get the tax rate set, it's really difficult to move that upward.
That's why you look for other.
And that's one of my biggest concerns is I want to, with these numbers, we need to make sure that we take into consideration that these would still be represented employees. The union isn't just going to walk away from special districts.
No, so
Um,
Keno, so I think we're no longer talking about a special district.
A service
I
district.
think we're talking about a service district. So
So,
still a
but
still under the county purview, just a allocated amount of resources that are dedicated towards a specific service the county's providing.
correct. But we would want to be cautious, just like we would with our tax money that we currently get. As expenditures go up and the cost of such goes up, this tax rate would not fluctuate to cover future expenditures as those go up. So we wouldn't want to put all your eggs in one basket with this.
So one caveat to that, Keena, is it would go up the normal 3% that our tax base currently goes up, which obviously isn't enough to combat the current inflation. But as assessed values go up 3% annually, so would the dollar amount received. The tax amount wouldn't go up in terms of the number. 59 cents per thousand is not going up.
The assessed
The
value.
assessed value of those properties go up 3% annually, which means you receive 3%, an increase of 3% of revenue annually due to the assessment.
Correct. And my point is that the number that we put out to the voters, essentially, we want to ensure that there's room for inflation overall, personnel services and such, because of the fact that those go up greatly beyond 3% of assessed value.
So, Jay, you're talking about a service district.
Well, I'm talking about in general. So let's say, let's use the library, right? So let's say the library is at 17 cents per thousand assessed annually, right? They're going to receive the same 17 cents per thousand, but the per thousand is increasing by 3% annually.
Correct.
So just
Correct.
like our 59 cents. So I'm not saying that the tax rate goes up, but the assessed amount that is taxed goes up annually.
But I don't think the service district does.
Well, no,
Well-
because it's all based on assessed value.
It's all based on a permanent rate of assessed value. So it would adjust as the assessed values adjust as well. But to your point, Keena, not at the current rate of our inflationary status that we're dealing with, which
Yes.
hit us in conjunction with all of the other financial woes that we had. So, but sorry, Sheriff, I'm trying to clarify a few things.
Why don't we do this? Lieutenant Crone can give the numbers, and then that'll give us a different perspective.
So on page 2 of your guys' packet there should be a breakdown of personnel, materials, and services, as well as current levels and the proposed levels. So the top, where it says personnel, materials, and services, that is with the service district. And that includes the additional personnel that we're asking for and the indirect costs associated with that. The personnel cost, we budgeted for the rate at a deputy 3, which is the highest rate that we can without them being supervisors. So there is a little bit of wiggle room in there. If we hire a bunch of people who qualify at level or deputy 1, there's some carryover there. This rate, the top numbers, the 7 million and some change there, that is all of it that it would cost us to run the operation that we're asking for. That includes all of the revenue that we generate with civil fees, fingerprint fees, and other ancillary fees that we have. The bottom proposed level, that is all of the general fund and road fund money that we take today, and it removes all of that from the road fund, or from the general fund. So we're asking for the 6,416,933 to take all of the money that we would ask from the general fund. So, and that would cover 15 criminal and civil positions, 18 jail positions, that includes the nursing staff. So it's an additional 2 that we have today, and 9 communications, which is 1 more than we have today. This does not get us back to where we were, like I said. This gets us better than we are today. It's about 7 more patrol deputies than we have. So that gives the community a little bit of public safety, and we'd have to look at that. If this-
7 days a week at least.
And what's that rate, Jeremy?
the tax rate,
Yeah.
it's $1.82 per thousand. And those are numbers that I received from the assessor's office, at a tune of 0.283 per $1 million asked, was their rough estimate.
Okay, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's lining up. So like, for instance, right now, between general fund and road funds, I mean, this is approximating to the nearest $100,000. So we're at 4.9 currently, not including the miscellaneous going to SAR, the miscellaneous going, that's just dispatch, patrol, jail. We're at 4.9. So
6.4.
6.4 would essentially provide the 1.4 extra to bring on some of these extra positions.
Correct.
And what I estimated right here, you had essentially 42 FTE minus P and P, so,
And the Marine.
okay, and the Marine. So you're essentially, what I looked at from last year's FTE, you would be 6 less. From last year's FTEs. Okay, I'm just trying to follow.
Yeah, and so if you take 6 less, that essentially gets us to a point where we were last year with all the open positions we had.
Understood. Okay,
This does not keep up with inflation, like we've talked about, and because it's a service district, we still pay the indirect admin costs, and that was figured into the materials and services at the rate. And being at a service district, any overage would have to come through general fund dollars and approval of the budget committee and the board of commissioners.
yeah, so this has been an interesting exercise for me for the past, couple weeks since you and I talked originally about what the kind of the idea was. And so what this is shaping up more, instead of like a patrol service district, this is a genuine sheriff service district, and providing the multitude of jail dispatch patrol among SAR and some of the other stuff that's under the purview of the sheriff. So, and yeah, so I mean, there's a lot that comes along with this that we'd have to figure out in terms of because the Board of Commissioners oversees the receipt and disbursement and oversight of the dollars, because it comes into the county and is dispersed as county dollars. But it's dispersed, from my understanding, it's dispersed with direct intent towards that service delivery, right?
It's dedicated for that, yes.
Yeah, and so, some of the things that just popped in my head during that process was like, well, at that point, then it essentially wouldn't, I'm assuming it might be part of budget committee discussions, because it's a whole new tax rate that we have to approve outside of the regular 59 cents tax rate annually that we have to approve each year. So There's a lot of ins and outs. Those are all details. I mean, those are far off details that, I mean, we'd be working out. But point is it's been quite a mental exercise to try to figure out how it all fits together. But
Well, we've never done it before.
right, no, I know. And so,
So Jay,
yeah, Keenan.
on the service district under a county.
Mhm.
So when I was reading the service districts, it says that independent local government's not part of a city or county. It says here governed by the Board of Commissioners. How are they governed by the Board of Commissioners?
So that's an interesting. So here's my hypothesis on that, because those were two contradicting statements. And what it's saying in my head is it's independent from the county's permanent tax rate of 59 cents. That's the independent of. It's not part of the county's permanent tax rate. It's its own tax rate. It's independent, but still governed by the county because it's a county's service. So that's how I interpreted it, but I was going to go through, I was going to utilize AOC and have their people look at those two statements and provide more clarity. But that was my first intuition on how those two statements work together.
There's a service agreement that's attached, the Josephine County example. And so they contract with the service district to provide certain law enforcement services. District agrees to provide so forth. The county agrees to pay and reimburse, and mutual agreements and responsibilities, and terminability at will at 90 days. I would have to look at this a lot more closely, because that doesn't sound like that you're working under the purview of the county.
Well, there's 60.
And that was my understanding because it says district board is completely responsible for personnel administration,
read that.
financial administration, laws, public records, public meetings, all that. So I just wondered sounds like it's a contract.
Yeah, so I think, what we can do, Keena, maybe on our aspect of trying to get more information and background, you maybe like you and I and Ted can get a hold of AOC. There's over 60 of these service districts within counties. So
Yeah.
it's I'm sure it's something that's not.
It's very similar to the 4-H extension and how we have to approve or how you guys approve their.
Budget?
Okay.
So it's very similar to that.
That makes sense, because 4-H doesn't have a governing board. The county is their governing board. That makes sense. If it's much in line with 4-H, or something of that nature. And it would make sense, and these are all things that we would have to processes that we'd have to work out, obviously, down the road. But it's just getting the conversation started, I think, is.
We would still have the advisory committee that would make the recommendation for everything that we're doing.
Yeah.
But like 4-H, it's you guys.
Right. Sure. So that's a great example, Lieutenant Crone. So when so can I just sum up what I'm hearing, Sheriff? So what I'm hearing is not enough time to get it done by November, at least done properly. Shooting for May. Still probably need a lot more information gathering. But if we're going to push this, hopefully, if we're going to try to push this through the end zone, we probably need to have regular dialogue regarding how this is going forward. And at the same time, and I think this may have been learning from past, at the same time that we're trying to learn and get the information to do this, we also need to have a long-term strategic plan if it doesn't work. Right? So we gotta have kind of two roads that we're working on at the same time. to be prepared.
And I would agree with you, Jay, because $1.82 is still a lot, and we're going to be asking people to pay $1.82 for less services than we had before any of this. A little more than.
$2.23 for services.
That would have been 24/7 though. So, so we're going to need a lot of public input on that process as well.
Sure. I mean, the whole process is going to be public,
Down 70%.
public input.
They may have said it in a survey, but it didn't come out that way in the vote.
It sure didn't.
I don't think the microphone's working.
Oh, when I was on the phone, I was having troubles hearing it as well, Keena.
Okay.
Jeremy, can you test it real quick? Can you just
Is it working, Natasha?
No,
No? Nope.
test?
Test, test.
doesn't sound like it.
Doesn't sound like it's working, so.
Oh, the light's on.
Blow in it.
Huh.
The big thing that, if we're gonna have a path moving forward, is from the sheriff's office perspective, this is incredibly taxing and time-consuming. The sheriff has said, he's out taking calls all the time. I'm covering the jail all the time. We need to be able to at least maintain the services that we have today. So, there's been discussion about what happens if nothing gets put on the November ballot, if nothing happens in May. But the sheriff's office, we want to be good partners with everyone and work towards a solution, but we can't if we continue to lose staff. So there needs to be a threshold where this is where we're at, so we can continue to work forward on this. Because otherwise we have to take priority over the services that we're required to provide.
Has there been any consideration to other staffing models or using the resources we have differently than we are now? Because I know we're, Monday through Friday, 8 to 6?
Like I said, we have checked a lot of different schedules and staffing issues, and this is the best one that we decided to come up with as a group administrative group to put on the 5 days a week, 10 hours a day. That's 2 hours extra every day. And right now, like I say, you got people out on vacation, people sick, so we're having to respond as it is. So we don't have the staff to do anything different.
Okay.
I'd like to bring up Joe Wilson. He's got some information he'd like to provide to the on the regarding this survey.
Thank you, John. When John asked me to be on the law enforcement committee, I told him it might be a bad idea, or I kind of step on toes. So, as you know, John. So I'll try to avoid that. But we have a very hard issue in front of us. We need to appreciate where we are to know where we need to go. And I think you're very right, Jay. We have multiple paths that we can take. Right now, I don't think a lot of people in the county really realizes the predicament that we're in. I think a lot of them are going to realize in the rural areas, when they call for police protection, it isn't going to be there. It's going to be take a number. And you're going to hear about it down here. And it's not a good situation, but we are where we are because we don't have the funding. But we have multiple avenues to get to where we need to go, to get to our goals. Some of them are long-term. Some of them are short-term. Now, my understanding, John, is we're not going to be able to get this on the ballot this November. So what we're talking about is something that's going to happen in May. And we have a lot of time to educate people and prepare people for that. So that's one path. The other path is, what do we do right now? What can we implement right now? What steps can we take to make things better now? Now, we have some tools. I'm a big advocate of advisory votes because anything we talk about in here, any of us, if the people don't want it, it ain't happening. It's up to the voters. I kind of look at things like, you know, you guys are the shepherd of the herd of this county, and this man, the sheriff, is our sheepdog. But our sheep, they vote. They make the decision. We all work for them. So we need to bring them into the process, and advisory votes do that. We still have time to get something on the ballot, advisory-wise. And the thing about an advisory vote is it's also a way to educate everybody. You'll have a big turnout in November. So everybody that votes is going to see what we put in that advisory vote. We can give them the information about where we are and the problems we have and the choices we have. And there aren't any easy choices. I'm a small government person. I agree with the founder who said government is a necessary evil. Taxes to me is the dirtiest word there is. But I do know of one tax that may pass in this county the voters might buy. It doesn't solve our problem, but with me, every penny we get is another penny to a dollar to hire another deputy. And if we only need to hire another 4 or 5 to get 24/7 service to improve what we have, or 6 or whatever it is, every one we add in will be that much closer. So that particular tax that I'm advocating, it could be put out as an advisory question to people. You don't have to get them to vote on it unless you want to. Is something that only taxes tourists. We have 23,000 people in here normally during the year, and we grow to 40,000. You do a tax that's half of what they're paying in California. They're still coming up here. It's people say, well, how do you implement that? Well, I don't know if y'all know about the grocery cart races we have on the first Monday of every month at McKay's. Seniors like me, we get to have a discount, but they have a database and they know who us seniors are, so we can come there on Monday and get them the first Monday of the month. There are ways to create databases that the people that live in this county will not have to pay the tax. Now, when the people I hate sales tax, I hate property taxes, I hate them all, but is it right that we don't give law enforcement protection to the rural areas? The people that live in the urban areas, they have law enforcement. But they should understand that law enforcement, all they would have is something similar to meter maids without the jail, and that is the sheriff's office also. So the people in the urban areas need to support the sheriff's department, but it's not right that we don't have rural law enforcement. And you can bet the bad people in this world, the cartels, they moved into Cave Junction when they didn't have law enforcement. They're still there. They're looking at us right now. They're paying attention. We can't let that happen here in Curry. So that's one consideration. We need to use that tool of the advisory vote to find out what people will support. And that will also educate them and not waste their time going in directions that the people won't vote for. Now, Chris, when he first became county commissioner, he had something up on his webpage here at the county. And he had a fallout from it, but I know, and I'm glad you're here today. I want you to talk about it. I don't know how much you feel about it now, what you feel about it now, but that was then and this is now. And right now, it is wrong that rural people do not have law enforcement. And we bring in, as I brought up with you, Jay, we bring in $30 million in taxes, I don't know, somewhere in that neighborhood in this county. And half of it goes to education and all the other things we have in the county. Percentage-wise, it's right now in the county for the sheriff, we're only 50% of the general fund. We need to look at all the money that's coming in the county and see how we can use that money efficiently. If we can consolidate something and bring more money into the county, like what Chris' proposals were concerning, I think, what was it, Chris, the school districts, how many, and the libraries or whatever. But consolidation, I know there's going to be people against doing anything different, but we have to think about things this way. We have to do what the majority wants. A vocal minority should not influence bad decisions. And we need to make the hard decisions about how do we give the rural people who are paying taxes what they deserve, law enforcement. So I'd like Chris to address that if he's interested. And maybe you don't see it the same way, but I think that's something that should be considered. Again, an advisory question, addressing it will let people understand what we're doing before we do it. And if they don't support it, don't go that route. Let's go the routes where the people will support. But everybody in this county better realize we're in dire straits right now. If you live in the rural areas, your life is in danger because you don't have sufficient law enforcement. And I don't think anybody disagrees with that here in this room. And I think if we get that information out to the voters, they won't either. Now, let's see. I might have a couple other items I wanted to mention about funding. I think that's the key points. But I believe we have a tool, the advisory vote. Let's use it. Let's bring the people into the process. And you tell me a better way to do that. Because when they vote, they're going to think about what they're voting for. That creates a debate. We have to do something, and we have to be proactive. So those are some suggestions.
Thanks, Joe.
Good afternoon, Christopher Pash, 94589 North Bank Road, River Road in Gold Beach. I'd like to kind of mention, what we need to do here. I don't know if it's, the special district is the right way to go or the other district that you all are talking about. I think there's some downsides to both of them. The hardest part for us when I was a commissioner was to get good information to the public and get the public to respond to us. And that was the difficult part. And I remember when he did a mailing, we did a mailing about 2 or 3 years ago, and we got more response from that than we ever got, and I think it was $6,000 or $7,000 that it cost to do that. That may be something to consider on opening that conversation with the public, but we have to let the public here know how serious this is, and it's just we're not getting there. There's not enough information getting to the public that says, would you rather have in a county of mostly senior citizens, 50 and above, 5 libraries, or would you rather have an officer come and help you when you need it? Would you rather have, I don't know how many grave site districts we have that most people didn't even file for a seat in. I think there's a lot of, at least 2 elections ago, there was a lot of seats that were vacant on some of them, and some of them, all 3 seats were vacant. So do we need 14 of those in the county, I think there was, or 12 or something like that? Or do you want to have law enforcement to answer your phone call? And I know special districts is going to be difficult. To get a special district formed for the sheriff's department might be easier than consolidating other districts. But I do know one thing. Because I'm on the Wedderburn Fire District, I kind of really rode that horse pretty hard. And I got a meeting together with all of the special districts for the fire departments in this county. And we sat at a table and we talked. And we had a consensus of everyone to look into consolidating the special districts to 1. That's 14 fire districts. How that would run, how that would all happen, it was to be determined. But then there was so much negative things from different people in the county that kind of threw a wrench in it. Well, who's going to run it? You're going to have one you're going to have one chief. You're going to have this. You're going to have that, and it just created a mess from it. But I really believe if we sit together as human beings and talk to each other and can find a way to let the public know that you're not gonna have a police officer in rural county come and help you because his shift is over and there's nobody to cover him. And I know cities will do a lot to cover, but how long is it gonna take a deputy to get in a rural part of this county alone and put him in danger? That to me is crazy. As we all know, crime is coming here. I mean, Brad, you know, you and I spoke 2 or 3 years ago. You see the bandanas and the cars running in the Brookings and out here. We've had some shootings now in the county. We have cartel in the county. We've had 2 big marijuana busts in the last couple of years. I mean, huge marijuana busts.
Yeah.
That's all cartel, and you know, they were all bailed out the next day and they were gone.
Yep.
So they're here. And the sad part is, like so many cities in this country, oh, it'll never happen here. Nothing tragic can ever happen here. This is a great community, and they have school shootings, or they have this or that. I brought a school shooting threat to John about 5 years ago. I had a girl saying that her brother was going to go and do something horrible in Brookings, and they stopped it. But it can happen here, and I just hope that we don't have a tragedy in Curry County before we can fix this problem. I'd like to offer anything I can do to help. If you guys want to have workshops, if you want to have the business people get together in the community, but we have to find a way to do this. Again, I am more leaning toward the special district than I would be leaning toward the other. I don't like contracts. Just don't like them. So they get kind of scary. This board may be 100% on board with what the sheriff's department is doing. The next board may not be. So those kind of things get scary for me. So
That was sort of the focus of the last meeting. That was the import that was sent. You know, if you want to address the problem, permanently, that would be the special district, because the special service district, I don't think does it.
you got too many people that can get into get attorneys together and work together to just so. But with that, we would have to promise the people that we can consolidate special districts. I mean, it's in 3 meetings we had the fire districts all at a table, and they were ready to seriously sit down and talk about consolidating special districts. And if you do that and you come up with a new budget to run those, because now they can all share services, the excess money for that difference in budget can go back into, you know, the coffers of that special district fund, and can help with the excesses that the sheriff's department may need in the future. So,
Jay, do you still remember the numbers on the special district numbers and the breakdown? Do you remember those? It was like 4 million, right?
4.6.
are we the largest, Little Curry County, aren't we the largest special district, number of special
Second,
districts?
second in the state with 42, I think.
There's 49 in Coos.
I mean, that's what the public needs to know. Little Curry County is second
Yeah.
in the state for
Yeah.
special districts.
So the piece that I think a lot of it maybe is unknown. A lot of people have heard the 42, and there's a lot of that. But what you're saying is, when we talk about consolidation, so when you combine the annual tax revenue that's generated by all the ports, all fire, all cemetery, all 4-H,
Everything but education.
everything but education in cities. So you take out education in cities, all the other special districts, sanitary, water, all those special districts combined bring in 4.6 million in annual, is their annual revenue, which, if those were even all dissolved, would not meet the 6.4 that is being.
But I think what you're showing the citizens of the county is, okay, we're gonna do it, this is how we get to doing a special district. We're gonna do this if you'll do that, you know, And again, that's gonna be a big rock to push up a steep hill.
And it's getting that message out and getting people to understand the complexity of that. And you face that. That is always the issue.
But do we just say, oh, no law enforcement? I mean,
No,
again, until a
no.
tragedy happens and we have a major crime happen in this county, and then people will say, oh, yeah, maybe we need to pay attention.
No, we can't wait. We need to take action. And I don't want to just throw something out there that we know is destined to fail, but we need to take action. We can't wait. There's been enough talk. There's been enough opinions, and there's been enough, we need decisions and we need action. That's what we need.
And if you give me a little attitude, I just have one more comment on the road funds. I'm sure you've all read the letter from our governor that we got 3.5 years ago saying, you know what, the reason the state doesn't help you more, you got all that money in the road fund, was the gist of the language on some phone calls. And then we got the letter saying, use the road fund. So I'm not saying to use the road fund down to bare minimums, but I think it's hard to ask for something when you got $20 million sitting in the bank. It's hard to go to the state and say, I need more marijuana money, I need more help with roads, more grants or whatever you're gonna ask for from the state. You got $20 million sitting in the bank, and I just, it's just something to consider. And I know it's down to 17 or 16 now, but anyway.
Thanks, Chris.
I'd just like to point out, though, that the road funds are there for maintaining the roads and the bridges that make the revenue in this county run. So I think going broke to solve a problem is probably not something I would recommend.
Yeah, I think going broke is not what any of us want. But talking about what Chris said, there is a shining light out there, and that is taking over the jurisdiction of our natural resources. If that works, we solve our problems. So if that's the case, we're looking at something temporary. How do we get to that point? How long does that take? I hope we get that ball rolling very soon. But the key is this. We need to find out what the people will accept. We don't need to waste any more time. And I feel like I'd support the special district, and I don't think people would be opposed to a special district. They're opposed to paying for the special district. Those are two different things. Again, getting the jurisdiction for the natural resources solves that problem out there. I don't know how long that takes, but how do we get there? Now, being a businessman, it's different than the way you guys think in government. I mean, we don't want to go broke too. We have to do layoffs. We go through a lot of things that it's just a part of doing business that I don't think happens as much in government. But we also take out loans, for the future, because we know that we're going to have the money and time and pay it back. And we need to look at where we are at right now. And if we have some temporary solutions, I know we do not want to rob that road fund. That's a nasty thing to say. But if there's a certain amount that we can get a basis of law enforcement in the county that protects the citizens, it won't be anything like what it was or what we want it to be, but something to get us to the point where we either raise new resources through the bad word taxes, like what I was discussing on tourists, which doesn't solve the problem, but this is a puzzle with a lot of pieces. You get enough pieces, you solve your puzzle. So we got a piece here, adds a few deputies, a piece there. Some consolidation and the tens of millions of dollars that's already coming into the county, and that adds a few more deputies, and we solve our problem. We do have that in light if that happens. So we need to work on that. I hope we get that ball rolling real soon. But we need to look at everything, and the exposure we have right now in the rural area, it's totally unacceptable. We all agree. We need to do something about that. And if it's just a stopgap, temporary solution, bare bones, we need to think about that if we can do it. But we need to get the ball rolling on all these other things, and we really need to get the public behind us. That's why an advisory vote on the special districts or anything else we're thinking about can do that. We can educate people, and people in this county are responsible. They're going to do the right thing. The problem is they don't get involved in the process enough. A lot of them, they're taking care of their families, doing their businesses. They don't have time. They have other priorities, and they get involved when you want to pull something out of their wallet. They get involved when they call the police and they're not there. They're going to get involved then. We don't want that to happen. We want to show them there are some options here and let them decide, because we all worked for them. I don't. I'm retired, but if I was in your seat, that's who you work for. What's best for them, and what will they accept? Should guide us on everything. I've said enough. Thank you.
Got one more speaker.
Dave Barnes. I've been working with I've been talking to the sheriff about this problem for the last 8 years now. And prior to my time as treasurer, during my time as treasurer, I researched a lot of different things. I was on a panel 4 years ago that Sue Gold put together. Myself, Bill Ostrowski, who was on an older budget committee, Sue, I believe Emma Durock, and there might have been one other person. And we were looking at a consumption tax. And I found out through doing that research that there is no way to just tax our tourists. You can't do it. The Interstate Commerce Commission and clauses prevent you from doing that. So I studied the work that Dan DeYoung did over in JOCO. They spent 2 years going out to people and having public forums and having focus groups and everything else. They proposed a sales tax that would have been only from May 1st to October 1st, which would have hit during the tourist season. Minimal impact on the residents. If you needed something, you don't buy it until October 1st, you're saving the money. I've looked into numerous other fuel taxes. I've looked into raising TLT money, pretty much everything that anybody can think of. And there's nothing that's viable out there. There's nothing that's going to raise the amount of money that we need. Plain and simply, a sales tax isn't going to do it. No other single source is going to do it. We tried it with the levy, and it didn't work. Now we need to, I'm supportive of this idea. I like the idea of having a special law enforcement, or whatever the proper terminology is, a permanent source of funding for the sheriff's department, if it's a service district. One of the big things that this does, I've listened to John over the years, many times we've spoken, and he has a hard time recruiting people because of the uncertainty of our budget from year to year. And this year it hit hard, and we lost a lot of people. But that uncertainty has really negatively impacted his ability to recruit. And if we were to have a permanent funding solution in place, it opens up his world, and it opens people up who are willing to come here then, because they know that next budget cycle they're not going to lose their positions. I just, what Chris said and what Ted said, I believe you both also. I don't believe that we should go broke. But I also don't think that we should starve to death while we have bushels of seed corn sitting in the shop. And that's pretty much that $20 million in the road fund. I see that as being our seed corn, and I don't think we should starve to death and end up having, a bunch of seed left over when we're done. It's just, that makes even about the same amount of sense as going broke, to me anyway. So, but that's all I want to say. I look forward to being a part of this and supporting this as we go through working numbers and trying to do what we can. I've been supportive of John for a long time now. First law enforcement officer I've ever met that I actually admire, respect, and trust. And when he asks, I'll do things for him. And I really want to try to get this in place for him and for the department and for all the people of Curry. So, thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
So a couple things I wanted to point out, and I appreciate everyone talking about the special district. The special district, yes, that is the the kingdom on the hill that we want to work towards. And that's years down the road. The service district is the stopgap to get us there. At the end of the day, if we decide to pursue a special district, we can dissolve that permanent tax rate. It takes a vote, just like every other one, but we can put them both on the ballot. You pass the service or the special district, this goes away. And that's how that could work.
The threat with that is that they don't pass either, and then you don't have either.
Right,
And
and
that is a real threat.
and just based on the feedback we got from the
Oh, I
town
know.
halls and the vote on the last one,
But with that, let me paint the picture. So we're 15 days into losing all of our staff that we did. So the new reality that we are all living with is today there are 2 corrections deputies working in the jail. There are 2 patrol deputies working patrol, and there is 1 or 2 dispatchers during daytime hours. At 6 o'clock today, there's 2 dispatchers because they're covering the jail to help do our doors, all the cameras and all the functions they have. There's also 2 corrections deputies. If there's a medical issue in the jail that requires the corrections deputy to leave that jail, we are now unlawfully staffing our jail. We are required to have 2 staff there, regardless of how many people are there. In the past, we've been able to rely on our patrol deputies to help cover that or to go to the hospital or something like that. Today, we can't. So now we have to find someone to come in, which requires someone to answer their phone, which no one's answering their phones, I'll be honest with you, because we don't require them to do it because we don't pay them. So we're in a situation right now where something bad will happen, and we're going to end up on the hook for it.
and
And
everything,
that's the reality. I was called out all weekend to cover the jail because of things that happened.
and everything you just said is true, and we need to find a different way to do what we're doing.
Correct. And that's what this is. Under our current budget, we asked and we received $4.6 million out of general fund and road fund. That's from search and rescue, marine, criminal, civil, jail, and communications.
That's really just jail.
No, that is from the general fund and
Road fund.
interest from the road fund. In totality of those or those divisions, that's the number we received in the adopted budget. If we can get to the $1.82 number and receive $6.4 million from that, that will free up that $4.6 million for the rest of the county. Those are all general fund dollars with the exception of the $1.1 million that we received from the road fund.
How do we, how do we get there? Because you just said what you're doing isn't working, and nobody's answering their phone, and everybody's quitting. So how do we get to May?
Well, we either all work together and we sell this, or something bad happens. And then we get a justice decree and we have to do something.
How do we get? So you're just going to go on with what you just described isn't working. You
Correct.
just said it's not working,
It's not.
but you want to persist in that till May, and not look at alternative staffing arrangements.
The jail, there is no alternative staffing arrangements.
You can't make any changes whatsoever. You couldn't add people.
We don't have budget. We don't have the budget to add any more staff. If we receive 2 more staff members, then we'd have 3 people on the shift.
So two more is what you need.
Yep.
Okay.
That's what we asked for.
That's kind of what I was asking. Okay.
Dispatch, they need 1 more to make that happen. But that just helps them out. For the patrol, they need 7 additional people in order to not only do the law enforcement functions that they do and the civil functions that they do, but also to back the jail up when we need it. So what we're doing today does not work. It's not safe for the community, and it's, from a risk management standpoint, it's incredibly risky. And
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
the first to
you're
agree
there.
with that. That's what I've said
Yep.
every meeting since the budget process started, but nobody seems to be listening to me.
so that's how we got these numbers. We're not asking for more than we need. We're not, this is just to get us by. And if 2 years down the road we need more and we come to the commissioners and we ask for more, then we'll have to we'll have to sell that and explain why we need it. But having that permanent funding that we can guarantee that we always get will free this up for us. And it frees up money for the rest of the county that lost in this situation that we're in. So.
Sheriff, is there anyone else you'd like to speak?
No, we're pretty much gone through our list.
Okay. Any questions, guys?
Yeah, Larry?
Hello, gentlemen. I'm Larry Preston-Enzi. I'm not much of a public speaker, so I see a lot. I hear all the stuff that's going on, and it seems like we're still trying to beat a dead horse and put the taxes on the people that are already here. Having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, what's with all the timber money? Why aren't we getting more timber money? Since the state controls, 68% of this county. Curry County possesses 75% of all the trees in the state of Oregon, yet, wasn't there agreement years ago with the state? And why aren't we getting some timber money?
So Larry, you want to explain that?
Well,
Synopsize it?
right, and
It's a really- it's a-
I just wanted to bring that up. But I have a couple other ideas, okay? So, and I'm not real educated, okay? But as you go up the river, there's people that own properties, little houses and this and that. So all of a sudden it goes from 80 acres to 160 acres. And these people cannot cut that property down any smaller. Majority of that is forest and grazing, which is the cheapest tax rate that this county can tax on. So why don't we take back our county from state ruling somehow and allow some of these people to cut their property maybe into 4 40-acre parcels? It may differ due to terrain or whatnot, but so now you have four times the parcels, and some of that will come out of forest and grazing and go into residential. See, and that'll raise some revenue that way. Okay, just maybe I'm talking out my ass, you know what I mean? But there's other ways to do things. Where I used to live, once you start doing that, where I used to live, they did a new construction tax. My dad was a general contractor. Pissed him off, and all the money wasn't really coming out of his pocket. And I've been talking to commissioners about this since I ran for county commissioner back in 2008. And it's a very simple thing, and we've got to keep it simple. And I believe it was brought in front of the people that it would pass by more than 80%. This is a new construction tax on residential. Just call it $1 a square, okay? There's been a lot of construction in this county since 2008. And this dollar a square would specifically go to the sheriff's department, period. And if you think about all the new construction that goes on, not on a lean-to, not on a new construction tax, because people are coming to this county. If I sell my house and I buy another house, this tax doesn't apply. It's a new construction tax, and the people that can afford to build a new house, they're paying $35, $75 a square. The gentleman across the river from me, he built an 8,000 square foot home. That'd be $8,000 to the sheriff's department. It cost him $1.2 million to build the house. What's $8,000? See, I mean, it's a simple tax, and it shouldn't get convoluted and put it elsewhere. This should be something specifically for the sheriff's department. New people are moving to this town, and they tax on the schools, and they tax on the law enforcement. And so this would be something that would be specific for the sheriff's department. It's very simple, and if you put it up for vote, like I said, I don't see why anybody would vote it down, because if they don't plan on moving, they don't plan on building a new home, this is not a tax that would ever apply to anybody. So it's just a thought that they did this back where I used to live. Now, and 50 cents a square went to the school, and 50 cents a square went to the law enforcement. You put in your permit application, the planning department calls you up and says, hey, Larry, your permit's ready, do what you gotta do. So my dad would have to go down to the school district, cut him a check, get a receipt, go down to the sheriff's department, cut him a check, get a receipt, bring it to the planning department, and then they would hand him a set of plans to build a new home. He was a contractor. So it can be very simple. And I don't know why something as simple as this couldn't get on the ballot this year. I don't know. I know there's time frames and a lot of stuff that has to happen, but this is just an idea. So you make it easier for people to cut their properties down a little bit. Who wants to manage 160 acres? Who wants to buy 160 acres? But if they could buy 40 acres, they would buy it. And some of that would come out of forest and grazing and go into residential. That's not coming out of all of our all the people that are existing here. Another tax, another. So these are just some ideas, things that are not being talked about. I'm just trying to think outside the box a little bit. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Larry.
Larry, how easy is it to get a construction tax? That's a Kylie question, or?
Oh, no, I mean, it would be a matter of,
We would put it on the ballot?
sure. But we'd also have to, obviously do the research and identify how many new builds we're having annually on an average 3-year basis. And I mean, I would assume, just off, the top of my head, that, we're looking at maybe a couple $100,000.
Maybe.
It's not a silver bullet, but through time and after time.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's
A
gonna,
couple $100,000 is a deputy?
right, it's, yes, so, but, yeah.
Anything else, Sheriff? Any further discussion, Jay?
No, so one thing I would like to just acknowledge that is that this discussion, there's been a multitude of different discussions had here today, a whole lot of different ideas and a whole lot of different things put out, and I would agree, Larry, when you get a chance, I would love to talk to you about timber, and also zoning. Zoning is something that it's one of our Achilles heels, for sure.
Since 1972.
Yeah, it is definitely, it prohibits a lot of growth and movement in our county that would otherwise be adding, value to our county and revenue streams. But I think a preliminary discussion, and it gives us at least a start point, a baseline to begin further discussions.
Whatever way we go, the service district or the special law enforcement district, I don't know if it's legal to do or whatever, but if we get that established, couldn't we not, if we had other funding solutions come up, deduct from the overall interest rate or tax rate, reduce that while we get this other funding coming in?
So, yes, right? So every year when you set the tax rate, you can set a lower tax rate. You can't set a higher tax rate, but you can set a lower tax rate. But again, that's going to be all dependent upon who is up there making that decision, unless it goes back to a vote to reduce the tax rate permanently to this amount, right?
Which I'm sure that would pass.
It probably, right? But nonetheless, that's just like with the special districts. The consolidation of the idea of consolidation in terms of getting all of the districts to come together, want to go off of one operating budget and then utilize the surplus that may be driven from that and given it to the county. that's something they would have to answer to by their own constituents in the district they're in. But the only other alternative to that would be that the citizens would have to vote the district out, and then either re-vote it in at a lower rate or not. But that's a hugely, that mountain is, I mean, that makes the levee look like a molehill. So, I think as long as we continue the discussions and we look at what we're looking for, that's the healthiest thing we can do. And in the meantime, we have to prepare for whatever it may have to look like long term. Should it not, right? Should it not bear fruit? The solution that's proposed to the people. And I'm not, definitely not against, Mr. Wilson's idea of a potential advisory question.
No,
I like that idea as well.
Yeah, my only concern with the advisory question piece is not the advisory question itself, but if the advisory question also has a negative response, you're now under the gun shifting gears for a May election without having all of that built up information. That you know what they don't want, if it does, you know what I mean, if that's what they say, but now you don't know what they do, and so you're kind of in a stuck.
We'll be wasting our time again.
No, not on what they don't, but we'll be in a we'd be going in blind to May on what they would, right? But it gives us definitely a framework on what they won't, if that was the case, or what they will. So that's definitely not something that I'm
It's all about how we
opposed to.
and educate people about our problem. I think that's the key.
That's what I believe, is you got to put enough questions out there. Do you get an answer, and we go with the favorable answer, the one that is a positive.
Well, it can't be a survey, right?
Well,
Otherwise, you definitely will lose your enthusiasm. I mean, you can't have like 8 different advisory questions. Because we've heard 8 different options in here, and every one of these people would click the option that they were most favorable towards, and you won't get any real consensus of what the majority of people want to move forward for. I mean, since we've gone through this levy process, I don't think I've had one person come to me with the same idea. They've all had multiple different ideas. I mean, I heard one yesterday that was basically like, it was a sales tax, but locals would be able to come in and get a rebate on their sales tax if they tracked it at the end of the year from the county, right? So it was like, I mean, there's so many.
there's so many ideas, but none of them come up with the money that's needed.
Correct.
None of them do. And even if you combine several of them, which creates a tremendous amount of confusion to the public, none of them add up to the amount of money that we need.
No, and it goes back to what, like we heard during the levy. Well, I would do 50 cents. And then, you hear other people who are like, I won't do 50 cents, or I do $1.50, but $2.23 is way too much. And then you have other people going, well, no, I can't do that either. So it's real difficult. And I do believe we can find some middle ground in an advisory question, at least give us maybe where the tipping point is, But then if the tipping point is less than we're expecting, then we have to be able to adjust and adapt to whatever that number is for the long term, if that's what the people will accept. And that may be less than we currently, or not less than we currently, but less than we would hope to be able to provide. But it may be what the people have enough, grace to allow.
I try to put myself in a position of, after listening to everybody from that last levy, and what they would and what they would not support, and trying to come up with a solution for funding. Yeah, I do want, what I want may not be feasible. What I want is a permanent funding solution outside the county That's what I would love to see. But I know it's not feasible because the cost of it's way too much. And our biggest problem, besides Josephine County and all that, is our population base. We do not have the population base to ask for a large amount of money because it just costs that too much money. So I try to choose which one would be the most feasible, the law enforcement district or the law enforcement safety or
Service district.
security. Anyway, I decided that it was probably more feasible with the lesser, the ones that doesn't cost as much. They still have the administrative services that we still have to pay for because it's already established, instead of having to do it with the law enforcement district and come up with all that. So that was my reasoning for bringing the safety district up.
Yeah. And I think, so I was studying Josephine's, and, Josephine's is a patrol and dispatch service district. And they excluded Grants Pass
Right.
in theirs.
And the urban growth boundaries.
Right, and the areas that are covered by Grants Pass PD as well. So, when we're kicking this ball around back and forth, left, right, and center, and we're looking at a service district, yes, if we went for the full 6.4 to cover all law enforcement areas, it does provide quite a bit of breathing room in terms of the other county services. But is that most efficient too, right? If I'm just going hypothetical, right? Just problem solving in public. Sorry, but let's say we go down that service district road and we do have enough in general fund to cover at least the jail, right? Well, then that would decrease the amount required in a service district to 4.3, right? So now we're looking at what that number looks like, but in conjunction with that number, now we have to really evaluate whether we can include the cities if it's just a patrol and dispatch district, right? If we can include the cities in that tax base, because if we don't, that's going to basically double the amount we have to ask.
Well, the boundaries of the district is going to be the entire Curry County.
Right, no, I know, but for instance, I'm just using Josephine's framework. If the general fund, because if the general fund paid for the jail, right? If the general fund paid for the jail, and it didn't have to pay for dispatch as well, or road funds and patrol, then now we're talking about 1.6 total going back into the general fund to fund all our other county services and increasing those areas, which would probably put us at a pretty sustainable amount, given the cuts that were made in all the other general services. But now we're only having to fund 4.3, or ask the citizens for 4.3, but the question then is, are we only going to be able to ask a select number of citizens? Right? So there's a lot of give and take, push and pull that we're going to have to probably evaluate during this process, because we don't want to ask for too much. We want to run efficient. We want to run responsible, right? We want to ask what's required to do the job. And so, I would say if we had 3.4, or in this case, 4.9, or 4.9, coming back into the general fund, we would probably have somewhat, I don't want to, I'm just hypothetical right now, but somewhat of a bloated county government that's non-law enforcement. It's probably too much, if that makes sense. So I think we have to, if we're going to find the solution, it's got to be in the middle of the balance.
And that's where having this as a service district as opposed to a special district helps the county, because we ask for the $1.82, that's the maximum allowable. If we get that next year and we fund all these positions, and then the following year, the commissioner's like, we can give you guys 4.6 million from general funds, well, then you set the tax rate lower to offset that.
Right, I know, but when people approve it, they're not going to see it that way. They're going to see it as,
That's part of the selling point.
I know,
They're
but
going to
here's the
see
thing.
$1.82 per
Lieutenant
thousand.
Crone,
No,
people assumed that the levy was going to be renewed indefinitely without a vote of the people. There was a lot of questions about that. I'm like, no, no, no. A levy's a levy, and as a levy only has a time span of this amount of time, and it dissolves if it's not put back on a ballot. But there was a lot of questions. So when you talk about a permanent rate, yes, it can be, but the assumption I think we have to go into it with is they're going to assume it's going to be that number indefinitely, long term, and we have to plan for that.
And to answer Ted's question earlier, how do we get between here? There's a couple things. How do we get from today to getting something passed? Is we all have to have the same message. And once we decide what we're doing, that's what it is. We're not talking about timber money. We're not talking about all these other avenues for funding, because this is what it is, and this is what we're doing to move forward. Once we start bringing all those in, now that creates the confusion with the public, because then you're going to get well, what about this? What about that?
I'm already seeing heads shaking in the crowd.
I understand that.
And
But that's how we have one message, one team, one message, one fight.
eh,
The next thing to add is we need to consider the climate that we're walking into. We have a November election that will probably have significant turnout because it's a presidential election. So we'll get, and if we put an advisory question on the November ballot, that will skew the response, because in May, we're not going to have that kind of turnout. So.
Yes and no, right? But it's going to give you a greater understanding of the assessment as a whole, right? The sentiment and on a larger scope. You're going to be able to get more of a cultural sentiment than maybe your May voter turnout sentiment, but that cultural sentiment will still really reflect the May expectation, I would think.
We would hope.
It would be
Less people vote in a May election when there's nothing on the ballot.
understood, but if that were, so if we use that justification on any advisory question, we would never do one. Because if you did it in May and you have in November and there are going to be more people, you'd have the same argument. So it has to give you a baseline,
Yep.
so.
It's a positive, I think.
Deadline of August 7th to be on the November ballot. Do you have anything submitted for the November ballot? You had mentioned one time, I think.
Well, August 7th is the BOC meeting to have something approved, but it has to be to the clerk by the 16th.
Okay, so it's only 2 weeks from today to come up with something for the November ballot, for an advisory question.
Correct.
Okay.
and we have a windmill question as an advisory question now that will go on there.
Yes.
So we have one advisory question that's going on there. We can have more, of course, but just be aware of that.
Aren't the rest free? Once you put on one, the rest are free, aren't they?
Well, during a general,
They're all free.
I think they all are.
Yeah, I don't think we pay for that.
No.
So just to.
They still cost, but they don't cost the person, yes.
So just to synopsize, nothing has changed today. Everything remains the same in terms of public safety. Nothing's going on the ballot in November, possibly an advisory question. And the next opportunity would be, for an actual change, would be May. Just to synopsize what we talked about. And then, and this isn't working, and it does put people at risk.
And that's the big thing that the public needs to know, is this is what you have for the next year. Is two deputies running the jail, Monday through Friday, 8 to 6.
Well, I can tell you that I just can't give up, and I will continue to try to figure something out with what we have. So,
What we have is not enough people.
okay. Any other discussion, Jay?
No.
John? John, anything else? Any last comments?
No, I mean,
All right. Then let's conclude this workshop. Let's take a 15-minute break before we get into the canine agenda, which is immediately following. So we'll reconvene at, we'll conclude this meeting at 3:29, reconvene at 3:45.